The Alpha Queen of Babylon, Part 3. Chapter 17. Fangs in the Firelight. Babylon did not fall with horns or trumpets. It fell in silence first. The kind that steals the breath before a scream. The stillness of a city that suddenly realizes it is prey. And then came the fire. Not from the gates. From within. The ash wolves had been in the city for 3 days before the first tower burned. Disguised. Hidden. Watching. Kesh had walked the sewers. Tamar had mapped the eastern sentry routes. 2 wolves slept in the stables of the palace itself, unnoticed, patient. Lilitu waited beyond the outer wall, her eyes on the moon, her claws already slick with oil. "Begin," she whispered. And Babylon answered with flame. It started at the ziggurat. A ceremonial flame, meant to burn incense, exploded into a tower of sparks. The high priest ran. The guards turned. But there was no enemy to chase, because they were already behind them. In the lower quarters, a pack of cloaked figures tore through the grain stores, scattering ash, marking walls with sigils glowing in blood. Wolves ran through the alleyways, not just Lilitu's, but those once hidden, once afraid, now answering her call. In the merchant district, banners burned. In the temple quarter, silver smoke rose in spirals. In the palace kitchens, the head cook turned to find her apprentice's face shifting, muzzle, eyes, fangs, and screamed. By then, it was too late. Lilitu entered the city without ever opening the gate. She walked through the eastern aqueduct, barefoot, soaked in river water and warlight. Tamar flanked her left. Cameron her right. Yes, Cameron. The Persian general. Not just her ally now, but her second. His sword was already red. "Where's the prince?" Cameron asked. Lilitu didn't answer. She could feel him. Somewhere in the heart of the palace. The bond burned now, not in pain, but in warning. He was waiting. Or hiding. Either way, she was coming. In the noble court, wolves broke glass windows and set fire to silk tapestries. In the temple of Marduk, a priest tried to flee carrying scrolls. He didn't make it past the altar. His scream was cut off mid-breath by claws that left no mercy. In the city square, the ash wolves stood in full view, shifting in front of the crowd. No masks. No secrets. Children watched, wide-eyed. Some smiled. Some held. And above it all, Lilitu walked through fire and ash and ruin, untouched. She passed a soldier frozen in fear. She let him live. She passed a noble bleeding into the gutter. She did not blink. This wasn't vengeance. This was remaking. By midnight, half the city was under her control. The ziggurat taken. The grain stores captured. The palace surrounded. And the howls rose louder now. Not just from wolves. From people. People who remembered her. People who once whispered her name in secret. Now they shouted it through flame. Lilitu. Alpha Moon. Queen of Fire. She stopped at the base of the palace steps. Behind her, Cameron raised a blade once blessed by Babylon's king and now dripping with ash. Tamar stood in armor marked by fang-shaped scars. The wind carried smoke, sparks, and blood. And the bond flared again. Lilitu looked to the great bronze doors. "Open them," she said. And the wolves moved. Above the chaos, firelight danced in the sky. Screams filled the air, tangled with howls and chants and the collapse of a city that once called itself eternal. But empires do not end in thunder. They end in firelight. And fangs. Chapter 18. The Betrayer's Throne. The great bronze doors of the palace were open. Not shattered. Not burned. Just open. The marble floor beyond was smeared with ash and dust. The walls, once lined with golden reliefs of gods and kings, were darkened, smoke-stained, cracked. No guards remained. Only silence. And the sin of fear. Lilitu stepped barefoot through the threshold. Each step echoed. Tamar waited behind, flanked by ash wolves. Cameron stood guard at the courtyard below, holding back the chaos. Lilitu did not need them now. This part was hers alone. The bond still burned in her chest. Not as pain. As a thread. Weak. Dying. But still alive. Still waiting. She walked the empty halls like a shadow from prophecy. The doors to the throne room loomed ahead, carved with lions and stars. She pushed them open. And found him. Prince Belshazzar stood alone in the center of the throne room, crownless, barefoot, bleeding from a shallow cut along his shoulder. His robes were wrinkled, half-torn. His eyes, once sharp with arrogance, were wide and sunken. He was not holding a weapon. He held only a chain, one end still wrapped around his wrist. The other, cut, frayed, dragging across the floor. A bond visualized. Broken. He stared at her. Not with anger. With pleading. Lilitu, he said. Her name cracked in his throat like a prayer no god would take. She said nothing. She walked closer. Step by step. You don't have to do this, he whispered. Lilitu tilted her head. Don't I? You've won, he said. The city's yours. The temple's yours. The people, they'll follow you. You don't need me. She stopped before him, close enough to hear his breathing. She looked at the throne, polished obsidian, shaped like a lion's mouth. Then back at him. I don't need your blood, she said softly. But I came for your word. Belshazzar dropped the chain. It hit the floor with a whisper. I made a mistake, he said, shaking. You made a choice, Lilitu corrected. I was young. Afraid. They said you were a threat. I was your mate. The word struck him like a slap. Lilitu took another step. I came to offer you the only mercy I can give. She held out her hand. Not as threat. Not as alpha. But as completion. One final time, she said. Complete the bond. Belshazzar's lip trembled. He looked at her hand, at the scars, the blood, the power it held now. He stepped back and shook his head. I can't, he whispered. Lilitu didn't flinch. Because of pride? Because if I take your bond, he said, I will no longer be myself. I'll be yours. She nodded once. You were always mine. He fell to his knees. Please. Spare me. Leave me with something. I have nothing left. Lilitu looked down at him, then past him, to the throne, to the city she now held in her claws. She lowered her hand. The bond between them shivered, then snapped. Not torn. Severed. Clean. Final. Eternal. Belshazzar collapsed, gasping as though a lung had been torn from his chest. But Lilitu didn't touch him. She walked past, to the throne, and sat. The marble was warm, the obsidian cold. She looked out across the chamber and whispered, This was never yours. Behind her, Belshazzar did not rise. He stayed there, small, breathless, forgotten. Not dead, just irrelevant. Outside, the howls rose again, and the fires lit the sky. Chapter 19. The Fall of the Gate of Ishtar. Babylon had many walls. The outer ones were tall and thick, built from mud brick and blood, layered with 1,000 years of conquest. But only one gate mattered. The Gate of Ishtar, a monolith of glazed blue stone, adorned with lions, bulls, and dragons carved in gold. Its arch was the size of a tower. Its doors were layered in bronze and cursed by the priests to stand until the gods themselves called them home. It was said, No mortal can break Ishtar's gate. Not with fire. Not with steel. Not with sorcery. Only the moons could open it. That had once been metaphor. Tonight, it would be prophecy. The fires from the inner city already lit the night sky, but the outer rings still held. Refugees pressed against the far walls. Soldiers held trembling spears. Archers watched the distant dust and shadows, waiting for a siege engine, for ladders, for battering rams. None came. Instead, they saw her. Lilitu approached the gate on foot. Not in armor. Not in war paint. Draped in simple linen, skin smeared with silver ash, her long dark hair unbound, her eyes glowing pale white, full lunar firelight radiating from her skin like mist. She walked alone, until the wolves followed. The ash wolves emerged from behind shattered pillars and desert ruins, their coats dark with soot, their eyes gleaming. Cameron stood beside Tamar. Kesh held once, sharp and high. The wolves did not charge. They waited. They knew what came next was not a battle. It was a reckoning. The soldiers at the gate readied their bows. But their hands shook. One dropped his arrow before he could knock it. Another stared in silence as Lilitu lifted her right hand, palm up, toward the blue walls. The moon above turned sharp and white, as if answering a call. And Lilitu began to speak. Not in the tongue of Babylon. Not in the language of wolves. But in the language of bone and bond. Her voice was low. Measured. A chant. Ancient. Lunar. Old as the first howl. The wolves bowed their heads. Cameron sheathed his sword. Even the soldiers lowered their weapons, not in surrender, but in awe. Because the air shimmered. Because the walls glowed. Because the gate of Ishtar began to crack. The lions carved in gold roared, though their mouths never moved. The blue bricks bled silver. The sky above churned. And Lilitu's voice rose. You held the wolves at bay. You took our names. You buried our blood. Now, you open. The gate trembled. Once. Twice. And then, as the moon reached its apex, it shattered. Not like stone. Like glass struck by fate itself. It didn't fall inward or outward. It collapsed, dissolving into dust and ash, a howl of light spiraling up toward the stars. Where the gate had stood, now only a swirling veil of moonlit smoke remained. The silence broke with a roar. Tamar's voice rang out. Ash wolves surged, and the wolves charged. Not wild. Not frenzied. Commanded. They swept into the outer city like stormwind. Not to slaughter, but to claim. To burn the old order from its foundation. Civilians didn't flee. They knelt. Former outcasts rose to their feet and bared their throats to the moon. Children howled. And Lilitu walked through the ruins of Ishtar's gate. Not as a conqueror. As a fulfillment. Inside the walls, the last resistance broke. The soldiers laid down their arms. The remaining priests fled to the shadows. The temples that once condemned her opened their doors in silence. And from behind every curtain, every window, every stone, came the same whisper. She shattered the unshatterable. She opened what the gods sealed. She is the moon's vengeance. Lilitu did not look back. She raised her hand once more. And the moon dimmed again. She had no need to speak. The gate had done the talking. Chapter 20. The Last Oracle. The city still burned. Not with chaos now, but with rebirth. Ash drifted through the streets like falling snow. The walls whispered new names. The people waited. But Lilitu did not stay to celebrate her rise. Not yet. She walked alone through the oldest quarter of Babylon. Past crumbled shrines and half-dead fig trees. Toward a temple that had been sealed long before her birth. The temple of Enkidu. The first moon temple. Now forgotten. Now humming. The door was open. No guards. Only light. But not sunlight. Not torchlight. Moonlight. Poured from the cracks in the stone. Soft. Cool. Silver. Alive. Lilitu stepped inside. The air was heavy with ancient breath. Scrolls, older than the city itself, lined the walls. Bones of sacrificed animals lay clean in ivory bowls. The silence was not empty. It was listening. She walked past a cracked idol of the goddess Nanasin, its eyes rubbed smooth by generations of desperate hands. And then she heard it. A voice. Soft. Like wind over still water. Not echoing, but everywhere. Moonborn. The priestess sat at the far end of the hall. Old. Nearly blind. Her eyes filmed white. Her robes were faded blue, the hem stained with wine and ash. Her hands trembled as she poured water over her feet. But her voice was immortal. I've been waiting for you, the old woman said, smiling without seeing. Lilitu didn't speak. She stepped closer, heart still and alert. The priestess nodded. You came through the gate. You walked the fire. The bond is gone. Lilitu's eyes narrowed. You know what I've done? The priestess raised a hand. I knew what you would do long before you were born. She gestured for Lilitu to kneel. Lilitu didn't move. Tell me what I am, she said. The priestess chuckled. Not what they said. Not what they feared. You are not cursed. Not touched by demons. Not a mistake in the bloodline. She reached behind her, into a hidden groove in the altar, and pulled out a thin, clay tablet etched with moon symbols older than Sumerian. This was written before Babylon's walls were mud, the priestess whispered. Before kings ruled by flame. Lilitu stepped forward. She read the tablet. Slowly. Her breath caught. From the bond broken shall rise the firstborn. Neither wolf nor woman alone. The moon shall burn, and in her fire she will make a bridge. Between blood and breath. Between beast and king. She shall not obey. She shall not kneel. She shall choose. Asterisk. Lilitu's voice was barely a breath. It's about me. The priestess nodded. You were never the end, child. You were the door. Lilitu stared at the flickering silver light on the altar stone. All my life they called me a mistake. They always do, said the old woman, rising with effort. When the old world knows its time has come. Lilitu stepped forward and offered her hand. The priestess touched it and gasped, not from pain, but recognition. I see them, she whispered. The ones who will follow. Not wolves. Not humans. Something new. Lilitu's jaw clenched. I never wanted to lead both. You don't have to want it, the priestess said. You are it. Outside, a wind stirred. The firelight dimmed, but the moonlight inside the temple grew stronger. Lilitu turned toward the door. "Is there more?" she asked. "Only one thing," the oracle said, sitting back down. "You will be loved, and feared, and followed." She looked up, eyes empty and infinite. But never again alone. Lilitu walked back into the night. The wolves waited below the temple steps. Cameron stood at the foot of the stairs, arms crossed, his sword sheathed. She spoke. He asked. Lilitu nodded once. "Prophecy?" She looked up at the moon, and for the first time since the bond broke, smiled without sorrow. "Not prophecy," she said. "Permission." Chapter 21. The Howl That Ended Empire. The fires had died. The ash settled. The wolves stood not as beasts, but as guardians of a city that no longer belonged to kings. Babylon was quiet. And then she climbed the tower. The ruined ziggurat of Marduk, once capped with gold, now cracked and open to the sky, loomed above the city like a relic of forgotten gods. Lilitu ascended its broken steps, alone. No crown, no armor, no speeches, just the storm in her blood. Cameron watched from the temple court below. He did not follow. He knew this moment wasn't meant to be shared. Tamar knelt. Kesh sat on his haunches, ears back. Even the wind was still. Lilitu reached the summit. From here, she saw it all. The gates shattered. The nobles fleeing in cloaked carts. The temples empty. The people watching with breath held, as if the moon itself had descended to witness. She raised her face to the sky. The moon hung full and silver white, enormous and hungry. She closed her eyes and held. It was not a sound. It was a breaking, a shattering of centuries of silence, shame, exile, law, and lies. It rose like flame, rolled like thunder, tore through every district, shook every window. And in the noble quarter, dozens collapsed, clutching their ears not from pain, but from what they heard inside the sound. The truth. The moon had chosen again, but not through blood, through will. Palace scribes fainted at their desks. Temple bells cracked. One general threw himself from the wall, howling as he fell. The remaining noble houses, their guards trembling, fled, some into the night, others into exile. No one waited for permission. They knew. The empire they served was gone. At sunrise, Cyrus the Great entered the city. No battle, no bloodshed. His soldiers marched past broken gates and streets swept clean by wolves. He dismounted before the ziggurat and found only Cameron waiting. Cameron knelt, then rose. "Is she still here?" Cyrus asked quietly. Cameron looked toward the summit. She was. They climbed together. But when they reached the top, she was gone. No blood, no cloak, no trace. Only the echo of her howl, still trembling in the stone. Only her mark, carved deep into the ancient altar. A half-moon, a single claw, and a circle closed. "She didn't stay to rule," Cyrus said, voice heavy with respect. "She ruled what mattered," Cameron replied. And down below, the people began to gather. Not for worship, but to follow. The pack grew. Newborns cried with silver eyes. Old wolves who had never shifted dreamed of running. The moon burned in daylight. Lilitu, the rejected Omega, was no longer in the city. But she was everywhere. In the breath of wolves. In the whispers of children. In the flame that did not die. Babylon fell that day. Not to fire. To a howl. And an empire ended, not with conquest, but with her name written across the sky. Chapter 22. The City of Aratta. Long before Babylon, long before Sumer, the scribes spoke of a city older than rivers, built by star-born kings and vanished into mist. A city called Aratta. The world believed it was legend. But Lilitu did not. Weeks after the fall of Babylon, she vanished once more, this time not into shadow, but into purpose. With Cameron at her side, and a hand-picked circle of ash wolves behind her, she crossed the burning sands, far past trade routes and memory, into the cracked spine of the southern Zagros Mountains, where winds screamed and compasses spun. And there, beneath stone cliffs that bled silver by moonlight, they found it. Ruins, but not dead. The stones hummed with old power, pulsing in quiet rhythms beneath the dust. Glyphs still glowed on the underside of broken arches. A dry riverbed ran uphill. The bones of gates twisted like they had been grown, not built. Cameron knelt beside an obelisk, his fingers grazing its surface. These walls were never made by men. Lilitu touched the stone. They were made by something like us. She walked into the city's heart, following instinct, memory, and the pull of moonlight through cracked pillars and tangled vines. There, in a circular clearing beneath a dome half swallowed by the mountain, she whispered, "This is where it begins again. The city rises." They called it Aratta, though even the name felt too small. What they built was not a kingdom. It was a sanctuary. No humans were allowed past its walls, only moonborn, those of both blood and transformation, those who had heard the howl in their bones. And Aratta answered them. The city did not resist being rebuilt. Its towers grew under their touch, stone fusing and bending as if shaped by breath, not mortar. Lilitu raised the first pillar herself, marking it with her own claw, and watching as silver light pulsed outward, illuminating glyphs etched into the ancient foundation. Tamar called them living runes. They responded to moon cycles. They changed with the phases. They sang when wolves howled. Cameron oversaw the outer defenses designed not for battle, but for invisibility. No bird flew overhead. No map could pin it. The path to Aratta was only known by memory, scent, and shared bond. Those not born of wolf blood lost their way before they ever saw the first gate. By the third month, moon-carved towers lined the horizon. Spires grown from quartz and basalt shimmered like bone in starlight. Fangs were carved into every stairwell. Claw patterns traced the streets. Above the city, a carved silver disc floated on invisible tethers, a temple open to the sky. This became the Mu Heart, the center of worship, training, prophecy, where Lilitu stood once each month and howled not for war, but for balance. In one tower, a new set of laws was carved by claw, not chisel, not commandments, vows. No wolf shall bow to man. No bond shall be forced. Blood will not make rank, choice will. The moon chooses the alpha. The alpha answers the moon. One night, Cameron found Lilitu standing atop the northern wall. She wore no crown, just silence. "They still speak of you," he said. "In Babylon, in Persepolis, even in the seaports." Lilitu didn't turn. "They speak because they think I'm gone. Aren't you?" She looked toward the sky. The moon hung pale above Aratta, closer than it had ever looked before. "I'm not gone," she whispered. "I've just gone home." In time, no one remembered the road to Aratta. No human ever found it again. But sometimes, at the edge of desert storms or deep mountain valleys, travelers claimed to hear howls in the wind, followed by the shimmer of silver light across the sky. And in the deep dark of history, a single name endured. Not as ruler, not as goddess, but as the moonborn queen of a city hidden from time. Chapter 23, The Bond of Fire and Flesh. The moon had risen. But tonight, it was not silver. It was red, not with omen, not with blood, but with sanction. The old wolves whispered. When the moon turns red under quiet skies, it does not mourn. It crowns. In the heart of Aratta, the central ziggurat stood tall and unbroken, its obsidian steps polished by moonlight, its spiraled carvings etched by claw and fire. Cameron had rebuilt it himself, stone by stone, layer by layer, with his hands, for her. He never asked to be alpha. But tonight, he would stand as equal beside the moonborn queen. The mating ritual of 2 moons had not been performed in 1,000 years. It required not only love, not only power, but balance. The bond it forged was sacred, not fated, not imposed, but chosen. Blood was required. So was flame. And before all else, willingness. Thousands stood in the lower court of the ziggurat. Wolves in their skin. Wolves in their fur. Those who had never shifted, now glowing faintly in moonglyph light. Tamar stood at the front, her spear lowered. Kesh was still for once, ears tilted toward the sky. No one spoke. They waited. At the ziggurat's summit, a brazier was lit, burning with white fire, fed not by oil but by moon ash and silver salt. Lilitu stepped forward from the eastern arch, wrapped in black and silver, barefooted, unmasked. Her eyes glowed, and the wind answered her. From the western arch came Cameron. No armor, no sword, only a single silver ring looped through a leather cord around his neck. When he reached her, they faced one another in the flame's light. Their bond had already begun. But this would seal it. Lilitu reached into the flame. It did not burn her. She withdrew her hand slick with glowing ash and marked Cameron's chest with a crescent over his heart. Cameron, silent, did the same to her. One claw's edge across her collarbone, a mark of chosen union, not dominance. Then, she drew a dagger from her belt. bone-handled, ancient, sacred. No hesitation. She slid her palm, held it out. He did the same. They pressed hands, blood to blood, flesh to flesh. And the bond ignited. Not pain. Power. Their bodies lit from within, like stars turned inward. The red moon pulsed. The wind howled. And from every corner of Aratta, the wolves answered. One howl. Unified. Unbroken. The bond formed in layers. Not a rope, but a bridge. Not a chain, but a vow. Lilitu's memories surged into Cameron, exile, fire, prophecy. His life flooded hers, steel, silence, loyalty without demand. They saw one another. Not through destiny. Through choice. The sky flared red, bright enough to rival dawn. Glyphs across the city lit up, glowing through stone and skin alike. The Muhart temple spun slowly on its tether, humming in resonance. And below the ziggurat, the city of wolves howled. Not in mourning, not in rage, in celebration. The Alpha was no longer alone. They did not kiss. They did not bow. They turned together to face their people, hand in hand, marked, bound, burning. From the stone below them, a new glyph carved itself without tool or touch. A circle, two crescents, back to back, and a line of fire running through them both. Fire and flesh. That night, no one slept. The city danced under a sky that glowed red till dawn. And far away, in temples and ruins and deep caves, old wolves stirred in their dreams. For the first time in millennia, the bond was whole. The pack was full. And the moonborn queen had chosen her king. Chapter 24. The Last Prince Returns. In the shattered ruins of what was once the noble court of Babylon, a shadow moved. Where once hung silk, now hung chains. Where incense burned, now blood pooled in forgotten corners. The throne room was long empty. But he remained. Belshazzar, the last prince, the once favored heir. Now a man with nothing left to lose. He had survived the fall of his city. He had hidden in the dark tunnels beneath the palace, kept alive by a loyal guard and something darker, the remains of old temple magic twisted into a weapon. For weeks he wandered. For months he listened. And when he first heard the word, Aratta, he did not believe it. A ghost city. A wolf city. Hidden in the bones of legend. Risen under her rule. Lilitu. The maid he had rejected. The Alpha he could not break. Now queen of a kingdom that would never belong to him. He read the reports with trembling hands. The towers of bone and silver. The wolves walking upright. The children born with moonlight in their veins. And worst of all, Cameron. Cameron, his former general. His blade. His right hand. Now Lilitu's chosen. They bonded. They held together. They ruled together. Belshazzar saw no love in it. Only betrayal. Not just of him. Of the world as it was. He stood before the mirror, and he no longer saw a prince. He saw a weapon. And behind him, kneeling in black robes, the last of the temple loyalists whispered, "There are still those who will follow you, my prince. Wolves without honor. Exiles. Outcasts. Bondbreakers. The cursed and the forgotten." Belshazzar turned, eyes fever bright, his hands steady. "Then gather them," he said. "We will raise the black moon host." They came from ruins and shadows. Wolves who had abandoned the bond. Humans who still worshipped the blood gods of old. Monsters twisted by failed rituals and cursed glyphs. None of them were whole. But they didn't need to be. They needed only a cause. And Belshazzar gave them one. "We march on Aratta. We tear down her towers. We unmake the false queen. And the moon will remember who ruled first." They marched under banners dipped in pitch. No sigils. Only a dark circle, scrawled in blood, ringed in thorns. The black moon. The symbol of bonds broken and twisted. Of a pact made of vengeance, not kinship. Of war without mercy. At the head of the host rode Belshazzar, armored in black and bronze, his old crown twisted into a circlet of iron. He did not howl. He screamed. He did not lead from duty. He hunted from spite. On the fourth night of their march, they reached the edge of the mountains. And the sky began to resist them. Wind howled against their fires. The stars shifted. Wolves among their own began to vanish. But still they pressed on. Because Belshazzar could not stop. Not while Lilitu still ruled. Not while Cameron stood beside her. Not while the bond he had cast aside had become a throne. At the edge of the desert, a scout returned from the mountain's southern trail. He bowed, shaking. "We've seen it," he said. "The city. Aratta is real." Belshazzar gripped the hilt of his sword. "Then we don't wait for nightfall," he said. "We burn her in the light." Far above, in Aratta's moonheart temple, Lilitu stood barefoot in silence. She had felt the moment he crossed into the valley. The bond was long severed. But the scar still whispered. "He's coming," she said. Cameron stepped beside her. "And he'll bring everything the old world has left." Lilitu turned toward the horizon. Her eyes did not flinch. "Then let him. Let him see what we've become." Chapter 25, The Battle Beneath the Burning Moon. The sky turned red again, but this time, not with ritual. With war. From the high towers of Aratta, the sentinels saw the smoke first. A black serpent winding up the canyon path. Shields without symbols. Banners soaked in tar. And eyes, too many eyes, glowing yellow with hate. The black moon host had arrived. And the ground itself recoiled. Inside the Moonheart Temple, Lilitu summoned her pack. Her voice was calm, but her eyes cold flame. "We do not fight for conquest," she said. "We fight for the right to exist." Cameron stood at her side, armor laced with silver threads, his blade forged from mountain ore and moon-tempered fire. He gave no speech, only a nod. The wolves behind him howled, and the walls trembled, not from fear, from readiness. Tamar stood atop the southern watchtower, eyes narrowed. "They outnumber us 3-1. They outnumbered us in Babylon too," Kesh muttered, cracking his knuckles. "But they weren't led by a mad prince back then." Tamar bared her teeth. "Then we end the bloodline for good." The enemy did not wait for night. Belshazzar ordered the charge at high noon. Screaming atop a black steed, face painted in ash, body wrapped in broken priest robes and stolen armor. As they reached the outer cliffs, the mountain roared. Glyphs carved into Aratta's outer gates awakened, shining with silver light. But the black moon host pushed forward, their rage muting pain. And the first arrows fell. Then the fire. Then the wolves. The battle was chaos carved in stone. Moonborn warriors leapt from the cliffs, shifting midair, landing in tooth and claw. Ash wolves moved like flame, fast and coordinated. Kesh tore through 2 enemy archers before they hit the ground. Tamar fought like a specter, her spear dancing like lightning, glyphs trailing behind her with every strike. But still, they kept coming. Twisted wolves. Bondless beasts. Men with black-stained swords and prayers carved into their skin. In the heart of the battle, Cameron found Belshazzar. They locked eyes between 2 burning towers. Belshazzar snarled. "You stole her." Cameron answered, calm as stone. "She was never yours to own." They charged. The world narrowed. Cameron's blade sang. Belshazzar's was heavier, brutal, corrupted by dark rites. Steel clashed against steel. Fangs met fist. Each man bore the weight of a world behind him. Cameron, carrying the dream of Aratta. Belshazzar, dragged down by the bones of Babylon. Their blades struck. Once, twice, a third time, until Cameron ducked beneath a wide arc and drove his sword deep, straight through Belshazzar's chest. The prince gasped, and for the first time, he said her name not in hate, but regret. Lilitu. Cameron twisted the blade, and Belshazzar, the last prince, fell. The black moon host scattered, leaderless, broken, held down by Aratta's defenders. No quarter was given. The old world had sent its last shadow, and the wolves banished it in blood. At sunset, the flames were gone. The towers still stood. The walls held. And in the temple of bone and moonlight, built from the remains of old kings and carved with silver veins, Lilitu walked with slow, deliberate steps. Cameron waited on one knee, head bowed. He was bloodied, but alive. She stood before him, and in her hand, not a crown, but a band of silver mooncloth, soaked in holy ash. She placed it gently on his head, not as a symbol of dominance, but of partnership. "Our rule begins now," she said. Cameron looked up, and for the first time in his life, he smiled like a wolf. Far above, the red moon faded into gold. The age of kings was over. The age of Aratta had begun, and the world would never be the same. Across every empire, every forgotten age, stories still whisper. If this tale stirred your spirit, leave a like to honor the echoes of the past. Share your thoughts in the comments. Every voice weaves a new legend into the sands of time. And subscribe to our YouTube channel Historical Fantasy Stories, where myths walk beside history, and every discovery changes the world. The next forgotten legend is waiting to be found.